Hey guys, Pat Cwiklinski here with Sports Betting Dime, joined by my fellow fight fan here, Pete Amato. Pete, last time that we did some predictions and picks on a fight, it was the Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Bud Crawford spectacular on Netflix. Now, today we got another one. It's also on Netflix. It's also a bit of an extravaganza, not quite the same kind of fight. But what we do have is a very intriguing matchup, a heavyweight matchup between Jake Paul, the controversial YouTuber turned boxer, versus two-time heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. And I know a lot of people are thinking, who maybe haven't been as dialed into following this fight. This is not an exhibition matchup. On paper, this is a professional heavyweight bout that is taking place in Miami, Florida at the Kaseya Center on December 19th on Netflix. This is going to be 8 rounds, 3 minutes around, 10-ounce gloves. This sounds kind of crazy. I mean, when people first kind of got this, it was on the heels of Gervonta Tank Davis initially supposed to fight Jake Paul on November 14th, I believe, there. And that was supposed to be kind of a size mismatch between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. Obviously, a skill gap there, but Tank had to pull out for some legal reasons that he was pulled out of the fight for. And now the replacement is someone who I don't think anybody expected in Anthony Joshua, at least this quickly of a turnaround, for Jake Paul to go from Tank Davis, a guy who naturally fights around the 130-ish mark, to a guy who regularly fights around 250 pounds in Anthony Joshua, an absolute killer of a knockout artist. I mean, this fight's kind of crazy. Before we get into it, we just got to take a step back and say, how wild is that? Is it that this matchup is even happening right now?
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see because I've lived through the boxing's heyday back in the day. I used to love boxing. They had the Saturday night fights, stuff like that, and then it kind of went on kind of a lull. But when this YouTube boxing stuff started coming out, all the traditionalists didn't like it at first, right? We didn't like it, but I think Jake Paul has kind of took it past there, and he's making it more of a show, an entertainment show like it used to be. Different kind of fighters, experience wise, but I think it's a good thing for boxing. Jake Paul is a good thing for boxing. He's getting eyes on the sport again, and he's picking a legit contender, a massive knockout artist. And yeah, I was definitely surprised. I wasn't really looking forward to the Tank Davis fight. Obviously, I'll watch it, but it was like a kind of a catchweight kind of fight. It just wasn't. It was just kind of a spectacle to see how quick he could knock out a 135-pound fighter. But this piqued my interest when I heard this. At first I didn't believe it. I thought it was just he's smart in picking his opponents, and he picked one of the biggest killers out there. So I was definitely excited for this fight. I think the way boxing is getting to new eyes, and the way we're seeing the sport is very different than it used to be. But as long as we get to see exciting fights like this, kind of getting our excitement again for the sport, I think it's great. I think it's good. I got to give all the credit to Jake Paul. I mean, he goes out there, he says who he wants. He always says anybody, any place, and you don't really believe it. He fought an old Mike Tyson. Then you're like, come on, man. And then he picks a guy that nobody expected him to pick. So I'm definitely excited to see this fight, and I'm happy. I'm actually excited to see a boxing fight. The last one was the Crawford fight, which we did predict that we predicted Crawford to win that fight. So that was a good one.
I think you did. I think I had Canelo,
Uh,
but we can edit that part out. I think you
okay.
won that one, in all fairness. But hey, and look, I like the point that you brought up there about Mike Tyson as well. I think it kind of is interesting for this fight because when we look back to the Mike Tyson fight that Jake Paul had last year, listen, we all love Mike. Mike's
Yeah.
one of the heavyweight goats. We love everything that Mike Tyson was in boxing at one point in time. but let's be honest, obviously a shell of his former self, in his sort of late 50s. Um, it just wasn't the same. And he didn't move the same, and that was very evident in that fight. Also noteworthy in that fight as well, 14-ounce gloves in that fight, 2-minute rounds in that fight. Those are two different things. And now you're going from that, an older Mike Tyson, who hadn't fought in a very long time, 14-ounce gloves, 2-minute rounds. You're going straight into the lion's den against a guy well in his prime still in Anthony Joshua, who is, also side note here, there's been talk that a fight with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua is probably going to get done next year through the Riyadh season system. So you're talking about a guy still very much in the conversation, still very much in the mix. You're fighting him in 10-ounce gloves. You're fighting him with 3-minute rounds. I mean, that is a recipe for disaster for anybody who's watched, any semblance of boxing fights. They know the difference in kind of levels that there is here. And I mean, you just have to credit Jake Paul. I mean, it is a tall task. If this is what, it's marketed to be as a professional fight, they're going to get in there with these 10-ounce gloves. That is a scary, scary matchup for Jake Paul. But, you got to tip your hat to him. That is a fearless move to go against a guy 6'6", usually fights at around 250 some odd pounds. For this fight, I think he's cut off at 245. Shouldn't be an issue for him to make that weight. That's not that much lower than, the 250-ish that he usually fights at, just to keep it somewhat safe, I guess, if you want to, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, man, he's definitely got some cojones on him to step into that squared circle against a guy like Anthony Joshua. I'm super interested, like you, Pete. I'm curious to see what's going to happen, and curious to know your picks. So let's get into it. I mean, what are some of the sort of picks that you're kind of liking, that you're kind of seeing around for this spectacle of a fight?
So I mean, Jake Paul went from cutting weight to having to put on weight, which is a big deal in the middle of camp. But the thing is, he's training. He's been training. I know everybody says like experience and this and that. If you've seen I know anything about boxing, the less fights, the more fights you have, you tend to lose your chin a little bit, and usually you lose your chin in training, right? Jake Paul hasn't been really hit, unless he's been hit in training, but he hasn't really been hit, so he has that chin. So I mean, I think that's what he's doing. I think he's going in there thinking like, we're going to throw bombs at each other, and I think my chin is going to hold up more than your chin, because we've seen Joshua hurt. He's fought a lot. He has a lot of miles on him, and he hasn't been as active as Jake Paul. So I think Jake Paul is coming at this as a strategic way, as he does with all of them. But yeah, he's been training like crazy, training with the best trainers in the world for how many years now straight. I don't think he stopped training. So I do give him credit for taking this, but I think he is coming at this as a level where he thinks he's going to win this fight. And I don't think he would have taken this fight if he doesn't think he's going to win it. This might be a little crazy, but I think 9 out of 10 times Joshua wins this fight. 9 out of 10 times. But for me, this is not a prediction bet. It's more of a value bet. And so my big bet is I'm going Jake Paul by KO.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason being is it's more of like a logic thing. Joshua's priced around like minus 900, minus 800. You risk a lot to win a very little. Jake Paul has very long KO odds, and in his heavyweight division, all these guys can hit hard. One mistake, you got a big upside. So I'm buying the chaos. I'm not buying the consistency. I'm buying the chaos of this fight. Like I said, 9 out of 10 times Joshua wipes the floor clean with Paul, but there's that chance of that hit, that overhand right that could land and hurt him, and he only really has to. We'll see if it's as powerful as everybody says it is, but we'll see if he can hurt him. And if he hurts him once, then you never know. The fight could be totally changed. Strategy, experience, everything goes out the window when you're hurt. So I do like that. It's around, I think KO for Jake Paul right is plus 1,000 at FanDuel right now. So I mean, if AJ wins as expected, congrats. But you risked $1,000 to win $100. I'll live with my long shot here, actually.
I love that. I love it. Putting all the marbles out, man. That's a wild pick. But you know what? It's actually maybe not as wild as necessarily some people think, and I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. When you look at the last fight that Anthony Joshua had last year, Daniel Dubois, where he got caught with that right hand, obviously. People have questioned his chin a little bit in fights. We have seen that. Obviously Andy Ruiz was the first to do it back when AJ had his debut in the States. Set him back there, but I can definitely see it. Jake Paul has real power in his right hand, especially that right hand is a big punch for him. The only thing that I look at, obviously, is the sort of, obvious experience gap that is between the two of them. I do agree with the fact that, you're talking about the activity. I agree. Jake has been way more active, I think, in the last little bit than Anthony Joshua for sure. He's had fights on a consistent basis. He's in there. But, when you look at the guys that he's been in there with, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., Ryan Borland. These are guys who are, very much fringe kind of guys who have been inactive for long periods of time. And again, they are active competition guys that, come in and compete. But when you look at the guys that AJ has been in with more recently, it's all world class elite fighters. You're talking about the Daniel Dubois, you're talking about, the Alexander Usyks. That's
Yeah.
a different class of fighter in itself. And I think that you're going to see that change in level in this fight, especially. And I do think, as much as I respect Jake for stepping into the ring, I do think that this is a fight where AJ is kind of going to play with his food for a little bit. I think it's going to be one of those situations where he's going to feel him out for a little bit. I do think he's going to respect the power. He knows that this is this is a real fight, so it's not a situation where he can go in there and just clown the whole time and showboat or whatever. That's not really AJ's mo anyways. But I don't think he's going to play games in that sense. But I do think he's going to take him seriously. He's going to feel it out a bit. I really like this bet boost from Bet365. Anthony Joshua by a KO, TKO, or DQ over 2.5 rounds. And I think that this is like a good scenario for Jake in a sense because, if he lasts longer than, say, Francis Ngannou, who got knocked out very early, I
Yeah.
think that's an accomplishment in
Yeah.
itself for Jake, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think you're looking at this in terms of like, hey, you can take that clip. Maybe he lands a couple shots on AJ, makes it interesting in some sort of way. You can take those clips. Eventually, I do think. I just have a hard time. I saw the face off, man. Like,
Yeah.
you've seen it all. You see the size difference between these two guys just physically. Like, Anthony Joshua is just so big, so imposing, Olympic, level boxer. It is hard to say. I do agree. His chin does have some questions surrounding it, but I wonder, can Jake even get to his chin? Is the other part of this where
That's
I'm like I don't know,
That's a
So
good, yeah. That's a good point. So it does lead me back to what I was thinking when he fought Andy Ruiz. And small, short fighter. Obviously, Ruiz is 10,000 times more experienced than Jake Paul. But he has Ruiz has fast hands. He's short fighter. A lot of his compact punches come from awkward angles. Kind of the overhand, the looping fights, especially when he fought Klitschko. Another thing, short, unexpected right. AJ was stepping in. He was looking a little bit overconfident, and he got caught. So I think, yeah, if I don't know if he has trouble with the shorter fighters. I mean, he hasn't really had trouble with anybody in his entire career. But yeah, I think that's where I think my and like I said, it's less of a prediction and more of like a value bet here. Also, it can go. I could see it easily going the other way, like you said. I could see it going really relative to what we saw in Ngannou fight. Joshua playing with his food a little bit and then knocking him out in a second. He probably could have knocked him out earlier, He like you said, he was giving looked like he was giving the crowd a little bit more than they had. Ngannou was done that fifth, that first knockout. Everybody's knockdown. Everybody saw it. But yeah, I think it has more of a chance of going that way, in my opinion. But with the odds, I figured why not? Let's there's always a shot, especially a heavyweight. I mean, like you said, like do they have chins? These guys are big. I mean, heavyweight, you really don't have a chin or not a chin. These guys are giant. If you're going to get hit by a giant from, I mean, Jake Paul's not a giant compared to Joshua, obviously, but he's still a big guy. So you never know. It could always happen with that overhand right, or it come from anything. I mean, timing does matter here. Maybe before AJ establishes his jab and his distance and his rhythm, maybe he Paul has a chance to go in there quickly. Before AJ can kind of settle. Most experienced fighters like to settle a little bit after the first round. But like I said, 9 out of 10 times Joshua wins this fight easily. But with those odds, they're just they're too juicy for me.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it at all. And I like the point that you brought up there about Andy Ruiz a little bit too. Obviously Andy Ruiz, much faster hands than Jake Paul. A much more experienced boxer than Jake Paul for sure. But in terms of the height, they're I think around similar in height. I think Andy Ruiz around 6'1", 6'2". Jake's around that 6'1" mark. And that does play a factor sometimes with heavyweight fighting. You're sometimes used to like, especially a guy like Anthony Joshua. He's fought a lot of guys who are around his height, bigger guys, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". There's a lot of giants in that heavyweight division, and sometimes I don't think a lot of people account for how difficult it can be to adjust to punching sort of down in a way, and
Yeah,
you have to set up your shots a little bit differently than you would necessarily against a slightly taller opponent or a guy who's around your own size in terms of height. So that will play, I think, a little bit of a factor here, but I think that's where that feeling out process might come for AJ in the first and second round. Just kind of figure out where Jake's head is going to be, where he's going to be placement wise, right?
yeah,
So I think it's interesting for that as well. But we've never really seen Jake's chin get tested either, and that's the X factor here too. Like we could see him get hit, and we could see him potentially get up from something and keep going, and that would be very interesting to see if Jake has that kind of chin, that kind of granite chin that some boxers have. But again, at heavyweight, there's guys with
yeah,
granite chins where it gets cracked anyway, so it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily matter as much. But I could see this bout going another way as well, and this is one of the picks that I was kind of interested in is plus 350 odds on the fight to go the distance. Now, I think we're all expecting a knockout one way or
yeah,
another. I think most people are probably, in the public eye leaning AJ for the knockout. Makes sense, obviously.
yeah,
I'm kind of leaning that way as well. But at the same time, we'll see. Like it's going to be one of those situations where I'm curious if AJ doesn't see necessarily a safe route to kind of get his knockout, and do what he, is expected to do. I'm wondering if he's just going to kind of, accumulate some rounds, just kind of, keep enough going where he wins the fight convincingly, does, gets a knockdown or something like that, but doesn't necessarily get the knockout. And I think obviously that would be a huge victory for Jake, a moral
yeah,
victory. You come out of a fight with Anthony Joshua, lose by decision, not by knockout. That would be certainly something. And I also wonder if in the back of his mind he's thinking about this, Tyson Fury fight. And this is the problem sometimes with boxing as well. Like
yeah,
you're always thinking of the next thing when you got a big fight lined up, and obviously you remember when he was supposed to fight. AJ was supposed to fight Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder's plans got sidetracked by Joseph Parker there. So you wonder about this kind of stuff, and you're like, hey, there's one big payday in front of me with Jake Paul. But am I going to risk it and get into that danger zone? I got another payday coming up at Wembley probably next year with Tyson Fury. I don't know. I mean, it's going to depend, but I do still lean AJ by knockout here. but just something interesting for everyone to think about, you know?
Yeah, I think it would be a much more interesting post fight if like what if Jake Paul comes out and knocks out, like what now, the boxing world, what happens in the boxing world, like this guy, um I that's why I think I like Anthony Joshua probably more than I like Jake Paul, but I think I would like, I mean, it would be insane. It would put the boxing world on their head. But yeah, but going back to your thing, going to distance, yeah, FanDuel has a over 2.5 rounds at -118. I like that bet a lot. Like you said, if Anthony Joshua is thinking of his next fight, or is he playing with his food a bit, that over 2.5 rounds doesn't seem like such a bad bet. But yeah, I think this has a lot of. It could come out. Joshua comes out, knocks him out of the first round. Like everybody thought that was coming. Jake Paul kind of goes back to his place, and that's it. But it's always the what ifs in this sport. So I'm excited to see what happens.
It's kind of a win-win, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a win-win for Jake. And kind of, if you really want to think about it, kind of a lose-lose for Joshua in a way.
It is. It is.
It's like you win, and if you got to win by knockout because everyone's expecting you to knock this guy out.
Yeah.
And if anything short of that is going to be a disappointment, right?
If he doesn't win by knockout, people are going to be questioning him. Like, is he done? Is that his last fight?
Totally.
Because then you got to go fight Tyson, and it's like,
yeah, you can knock out Jake Paul, and you're fighting Tyson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the narrative. And I think that's the weird part is that they're not giving enough necessarily credit to Jake Paul. But I mean, it's all public perception, right? Like he came from this YouTube Disney world, and it and has made this transition to boxing. He's a legit boxer. He's a professional boxer.
Yes,
now,
he
right?
is.
Like, he fights regularly. He puts in the work. This guy's a boxer. I mean, that's what it is.
And a lot of boxers, when they start boxing, they don't have the money. They have a full-time job. They're boxing. He has the money where his full-time job, his full-time everything is just boxing. And that's a huge advantage for a young fighter, because usually when at that age, boxers are also working construction or doing something on the side because they're not making enough money. He already had that money coming in. He was rich as a young boxer in his prime, to where he can dedicate every minute in his life to that. So I think that's why people are kind of surprised of his skill level from his first fight to now in such a short period of time. But I mean, if you have that much time and that much money where you can kind of bring in the best people on a constant basis, you're going to get better. You're going to get better a lot faster than we're used to seeing.
Oh, it's totally true, and he's an easy guy to hate. I mean, it's an easy thing to hate, right? Like, you got this guy comes in with all this money, and he just walks into boxing and is picking some maybe older guys, some ex MMA guys at the beginning. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's like he chooses to go in there and fight people. That's a different kind. That's a different kind of mentality. When you're rich, like, this is the thing that people, that young boxers do. They want to get out, of their situations. They want to make their way up. And once they've made it, you've seen it, it's hard to get up in the morning and run in silk sheets, right? Like, but this guy, he's been in silk sheets for years now. And he's choosing to get out of those and get into the ring with Anthony Joshua. Like, that's got to be commendable in some way.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And at first, Jake Paul was I didn't really like him much, but I like the sport, so it was interesting. But he's gained my respect. Anybody that even gets in there at all really does gain my respect. But somebody that doesn't even have to get in there and then chooses to, and then obviously this is a real passion for him. So it's all about, like, he's not in it for the money, and he has the money. So that makes him dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I can't wait to see what happens. This is going to be a very, very intriguing fight. It is free with your Netflix subscription.
Yep.
Make sure you tune in Friday, December 19th, the fight before Christmas. Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul in Miami, Florida. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting fight. Make sure you tune in for all the coverage on X at SBD. And also check us out at sportsbettingdime.com. That's Pete. I'm Pat. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you guys soon.